Today's podcast, we're going to talk about something that's not talked about very often, and that's male suicide. I know it may be a touching topic, but it is something that needs to be brought to light and create some awareness to. So that's why we're going to talk about it today, and hopefully you can join us in the process of it through some stories that I have been given and stories that I have been asked for. So let's take this seriously as we listen to a couple people's experiences that may not be nice to listen to. But at the same time, it's something that I think we need to. Hey Pete, my husband's name is Dave. He was a successful businessman who always had everything going on for him. He always was the life of the party, made everyone laugh, and had a great sense of humor. One day, he lost his job due to the pandemic. Dave started feeling hopeless and helpless. He thought he was a failure, he couldn't provide for his family, and he began to withdraw from his friends and family, stopped going out, and lost interest in everything he used to love. I noticed changes in Dave's behavior, and I tried to get him to open up about his feelings. However, he refused to talk about it. He said he was just fine, and everything was under control. One day I came home to find Dave's lifeless body hanging from the ceiling fan. I was devastated, and couldn't understand why Dave had taken his life. I don't even know how to respond to that except for I'm sorry that you had to go through that. I'm sorry that your whole family has to go through it. I'm not sure if you have children or not. You didn't say so, but at the same time, I'm just sorry that you had to experience something that devastating. Now, Dave's story is not uncommon, right? The leading cause of death in males under the age of 50 is suicide. And a lot of people don't see that. They don't think it's like just heart disease or cancer. Like, this is something that's happening that we can do something about, but we think that we can't. We think that we should just leave them alone. We think that we should just let them be alone inside their thoughts, when that's not what they're looking for. I'm sure that's what they feel, because I'm sure they feel like a burden and they feel embarrassed because they can't handle this situation on their own, or situations on their own. They can't handle and understand the feelings that they're going through. Because we are taught to suppress our feelings in those times, right? Which doesn't help our mental health at all. But we're taught to push things down and move forward, push things down and go through with it, which I understand. I believe there's a time and place that, yes, we do have to push things down and go through with it in life situations. But if it becomes something where it's so hard that you don't even know what to do anymore, I understand how difficult it could be to not ask for help because you don't want to bother anybody, because you feel like you can get through this on your own. But we have to understand the differences between like a workout or having a bad day versus I'm going to kill myself and I'm not going to tell anybody about it. And I'm not using Dave's situation or story as, something that we all, I don't know, I guess that we are. Like, we're using it for something we have to think about. I feel like those life situations, people that write, thank you for sending these things. I appreciate you sending these stories, because hopefully this will help someone down the line that may want to watch this, because we don't want to look for help, so we're going to try to figure this out on our own, right? And most people that try to figure things out on their own, what do? We Google it, right? Or we listen to stories, or we go to YouTube and try to figure it out for ourselves, and what's the first step, what's the next step. And that's kind of why these stories are very helpful, as tragic as they are. That was really tough to read, and I don't think I want to read any more, honestly. But as uncomfortable as it is, I know this uncomfort may help people understand that suppressing our feelings for a certain amount of time is okay. But when you're pushing it down so much that you don't even know what to do anymore, now is time to ask for help, right? Go to your wife, go to your priest, call the hotline, 988. Suicide hotline's there. Guys, it's very good. It's anonymous. It's helped many people. And if you don't have direction, just call it. There's no hurt in just calling. And if you're on the other side and don't know what to do, don't be afraid to ask questions like, are you going to kill yourself? Do you think about suicide? Do you think about it? Because a lot of people that really want to kind of just want someone to acknowledge and validate their feelings and their thoughts. But most people are afraid to ask that question. Like, are you thinking about committing suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself? That it's a normal question, which I feel like is seen as not normal. And then your response will be like, well, that would be stupid, or you're not going to do it. You have too good of a life to do it. Why would you do it? Those are the responses that you don't want to give someone that's opening up to you about the question you just asked. Just like we talked about the video before, be empathetic. Oh man, I'm sorry you're going through this. Is there any way I can help you? Is there anyone that you want to talk to besides myself? Give them different avenues versus shutting them down and shutting down those feelings, because if you ask the question, you respond that way where it's like, you won't do that. That sounds dumb. Why would you do that? Your life is great. You're so happy. I don't understand. They don't either. Right? We don't understand why we think this way, why we're in it. But you know what we are? We are thinking about it. And right now, presently, that's the case. What are we going to do about it presently? Not what are we going to do about it when it's done. And then we're saying, I wish I knew. I wish I knew this. I wish this is what happened. Now, yeah, you did a lot of wishing. But at the present moment, we didn't do anything. So just like getting ready for an earthquake or a tornado or a school shooting, we should know what we need to say to people in this time of tragedy, in this time of, I don't know the word. So what's our escape plan here? What do we need to know? Hey, my name's Sarah. I'm going to talk about my husband, John, who was a retired Army vet who served the country for over 20 years. John has seen things that no one should ever have seen, and he struggled with PTSD for years. He felt like he was alone, and no one could understand what he was going through. I tried to get him to talk about his experiences to get help, but he refused, saying that he was a man and he didn't need anyone's help. One day I found John in the garage where he had taken his life. I was heartbroken, and I could not understand why John didn't seek help that he needed when he needed it most. Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing and opening up another story for us here on the podcast. And I don't know what else to say, but I can't imagine the things that he has to go through as well as yourself. You know, I'm sorry that you had to see that and experience that, and I can tell that you were very supportive and trying to be supportive of the situation, but he was so deep in it. And I'm sure 20 plus years of being in the Army and serving our country and seeing things that I'm sure that no one in their life will ever see or experience has got to be traumatic. And I always feel like the military, the vets, don't get the service that they need. And I'm sure it's offered, right? I hear a lot of things about, I had to go to the, I forget the medical places that they have the VM, I forget, they offer service and mental health and psychiatry and post and everything. I'm sure, I know they do, but it's just for them to be able to do so. And it's just hard because it does show a sign of weakness, right? And then if you're in the Army or the Marines or the Navy, or any branch, right? Being weak is not allowed. What's the main quote of the Marines? We all know it, right? Pain is weakness leaving the body. And, people put it on their shirts, and, wrestlers put it on their shirts back in the day. I don't think they do it anymore, but that's a motto. And it's true because they have to be strong, right? There's no such thing as being weak. You can't. They are so mentally tough that it's impossible for them to break until they do. And what's the recoil there? What do they have to do now? Most of them are so strong, so physically strong, on top of that, mentally strong. But there comes to a point where you can only be strong enough to handle the things that happened in the past. I can never, ever in my life say that I've experienced anything that anyone else in this world has done. Especially people in the military that have served over 20 years. How do you even compare life to how? How do I compare myself to someone that had an alcoholic father that beat him 17 times a day? How do I do that? How do I put myself in a situation to where I'm coming out of a third world country where I was mangled and watched my family die, and now I moved here and shipped here to the United States trying to make a living, and sure, I'm successful and I made money, but how do you get that out of your head, right? And as a man, you have to be strong. That's the stigma, right? That's the stigma behind it. We cannot show weakness. We cannot show emotions that will make us weaker. There are many times I feel vulnerable. There are many times that I feel weak, and I'm sure there's many other men out there. But some of us don't feel like we are worth the thought because we're so used to carrying other people or carrying other things or making sure other people do better. Or maybe that's not a male thing. Maybe that's a personality thing. I don't know. But I understand that I have to be strong in my moments too. And I have to carry on. I have to do things what I need to do for my family, for my friends, for my life. I have to move on. I have to move. But in situations like that where there's pinpoints and there's signs, right? Signs of not doing things that they used to do, really hating the things they used to love, laying down more, watching TV more, going into social media more, drinking more, doing more drugs. These are all signs that something is going on and no one says anything, right? I occasionally will drink, right? For our whole life, occasionally we're drinking Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, and then it stops, right? Because that's the weekend. When you start seeing someone drinking Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and then smoking, and then there's a pattern there, right, that has changed where it became from recreational to almost something that they need. What do you do when you see someone that works out 7 days a week, going to the gym like clockwork at 5 in the morning, day by day, and soon enough it only became 3 times a week, and then it became 1 time a week, and now they just started working out from home because they didn't want to be with people, so they try to set that one up, and then after that they just stop for 2 months. Don't you think that's a sign to say something? It is. That's the sign that you start asking questions, no matter how hard you think it's going to be. No matter how tough you think the conversation is going to be. Because we are better off asking the questions now than regretting it later and saying the words, I wish I knew. We always wish we knew. The thing is, we did. We were just too scared to bring it up. You're too scared to ask the question. And that has to stop. You have to start asking the question. Even more so with teenagers. Teenagers will always tell you the signs. They're there. And all they want you to do is ask. The reason I know this is because I've been there. I wrote a suicide poem when I was 16 years old in some girl's room. Because I was miserable, but everyone thought I was so happy and great and funny. The parents loved me. And I wrote this letter, just the letter. And then I was like, you know what? I can make this letter better. Brought it home. I wrote it up more. And then I mailed it to her. Was it something that I would do in real life? I don't know. Was it something I was thinking about doing while writing it? Yes. Did I own up to saying that it was an actual letter that I thought? No. I said it was just a joke because I didn't want to get in trouble. But honestly, it was not a joke. I was not happy with my life. At that point in time, I became anorexic bulimic. I had my eating disorders because I finally lost weight and I wanted to keep it off. So I would binge eat my emotions. I had a lot of restrictions at home with my loving family with just a very tough culture. I had no girlfriend. I didn't know if I ever would get one. I didn't like me. I wasn't good enough in my eyes. And I wasn't good enough, I believed, in anyone else's eyes. So when you feel like people don't love you, how do you love yourself? Or if you don't love yourself, how do you let people love you? Like, how do you love yourself when you feel like no one loves you? And it's mainly because I didn't love myself anymore. So how do I allow people to love me back? You know, that's going to cause a lot of conflict. That's going to cause a lot of misery. That's going to cause you to write letters like that. And did I mean it? Yeah, I meant it. Did I admit to it? No, I did not admit to it. Because I felt like I was going to get suspended from school. It was going to go to my parents. I was so scared of what was going to happen if someone found out about the letter being real, instead of just a poem to express my creativity. But I remember when the girl got it, she gave it to her mom, and that raised the flag for the mom, which I'm very happy she did. They called me immediately and asked me, this and that, like, are you okay? And I don't really remember. I was 16 at the time, or was I 17 at the time? I think I was 16 at the time. I was still riding a bike around. And she was like, you can't write letters like that if you don't, not if you don't mean it type thing. But I told them it was a joke. Like, it was just me writing a poem and me writing. There's no seriousness to it, but she told me how serious it can be to write like that. And I'm very grateful, very thankful for Mrs. I'm sure you're not listening to the podcast because I don't even know if you know that I exist still. But it was real to me. And as a teenager, I wanted to disappear. As fun and funny and loving and caring as I may have been, like, at that point in time, I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to see other people happy and me just pretending to be happy. And inside, I hated it. It kind of seems like a theme for me, right? Because this is what happened a couple years ago, where everyone thought I was happy, fun, and I sold it really well, pushed down my emotions like we talked about, pushed them really far, and then surprisingly, everyone gets a phone call that classes are canceled today because Pete's in the hospital because he tried to kill himself. And I'm glad there was no I wish moments there. I'm glad the doctors that I called for help actually did something about it for me. And they told me that I could not get off the phone until I called the hospital and went to the hospital. Because legally they're not allowed to let me go. I remember I tried. And then they gave Nat the phone. And I was crying on the table. And then Nat was talking to the doctors. And they were telling her everything. I'm not sure what they were telling her. And then they told me that I had to go to the hospital. And my parents came over. And my mom hugged me and kissed me. She hugged me. And told me that if I ever needed her, I could always ask her. And my dad was there too. It was almost like the first sincere emotion of empathy I felt for my mom. Sorry. Like, truly meant it. And I'm very fortunate to have that. I'm very fortunate to have parents that cared. Sometimes they do and you don't see it. And it just takes for that moment for them to finally show an emotion that you have been striving for, right? Suicide is preventable, and there's many things available, especially help, right? There's help available everywhere. So if you or someone you know is thinking about suicide or thinking about killing themselves or show signs of it, seek help immediately. Don't wait, and don't be the I wish I knew. Don't be the I wish part, right? Every time I listen to stories or other people's stories about someone leaving, it's always I wish, right? I wish this, I wish that. Well, I wish you did something before that. Because we all know, and we know we see it. And if you do see it, it's important that you seek help, and it's important that you ask for help. A lot of us are very fortunate to be here. And there are a lot of other people that are not. And that's sad, and it's a shame. It's time to break the stigma and start looking for the help that we need. And not be afraid to ask for it either. Because we have tons of years of being told that our emotions are not worth it. They don't count. If not, and you have these strong emotions, just push them down and keep moving forward, right? It kind of sounds like a thing that you've listened to 1,000 times, right? Pain is temporary, pride is forever. Got it. It is. But in moments of this situation, I don't feel those mottos apply. Thoughts of suicide and suicide is a very serious topic. And I don't think that's a type of pain that is temporary. It can be a pain that lasts forever. So it's time to stop the silence and let's start the conversations on male suicide today. Let's start to raise awareness and start breaking that mental health stigma that there is for guys to go seek help. I'm really glad we got to listen to those stories, because as hard as they were to read and even talk about with you guys, it's very helpful to us out there that need to hear it. And I want you to remember that it's okay to ask for help at all times, and that you are not alone. Okay? You are not alone. I know it may feel like it. I know that you believe it, but you are not alone. I understand how you feel. I understand what you're going through, maybe not to the extent, but I get it. And if you need help and you don't trust anyone, reach out to me. Let's talk. And then we'll start moving in the same or another direction. Because I would rather you talk to me than talk to nobody. It's funny, like as a podcast, right? I'm supposed to end it in like, hey, make sure you guys watch the next video. You don't have to. I think this was enough for today. But I want to thank you guys for listening. I want to thank you guys for coming out to episode 91 of the Jersey to Vegas podcast. I'll see you guys later.
Your title. Turn around, I need a minute. Are you anybody's wife yet? Keep holding my say no. So I try to read ya. I watch every move that you make.